A couple weeks back, a viewer asked if I could make a mermaid-sized video, and that's not a mermaid, I'm aware. But when I went to make the deck for filming yesterday, I realized I'd given away my last Stone Curse card to a newbie a couple of months ago, so it's gonna take a little while for me to get a new one. Those things are very rare on the market. Nevertheless, because you've been so good and patient, and you've come to every single one of my streams, this one's for you, Nip Nip. So, while we all try to forget that mental image, look, here's a pretty girl. This is Persona Lynn, who is from the C2 collaboration pack, the second collaboration that devCAT ever released. She's actually an extremely effective card, although not that many decks run her. So let's take a look at it. This deck is going to be a chip damage deck. It's going to rely on a lot of low cost, low damage creatures in order to deal sort of small but consistent damage over time. So we start out with the Imp. Low cost blue creature card. You could also have the Black Spirit if you wanted to, but be aware that the Black Spirit is much more vulnerable to Notira's Needle and Paralyzer Bullet. Next up, we have the Magic Missile, one cost removal card. You could also replace this with a Mana Holy Missile if you really wanted to, if you find that you're having trouble with black creatures. But it's generally not a good idea to use mutants unless you absolutely have to, and the Magic Missile's very effective. Next up, we have Elf. Now, Heavy Offering has become much less prevalent in the meta recently, so the Elf is actually quite safe to run. But if you are worried about it, then a Nature Hyena King will also work very well indeed. Then we have Notira's Needle, not my usual nature removal. Normally, I suggest going for hunt or command hunting, this kind of thing. But in this particular deck, Notira's Needle actually works out quite well. We've got a lot of creatures that have kind of utility damage that is applied through effects. And Notira's Needle can be effective not only for finishing off creatures damaged by those effects, but also for powering up towards our most expensive creature, which is the Hellhound. Then we have the Skeleton, again, just a one-cost creature card, very useful to have. And then we have the Kiss of Succubus. There we go. This is, again, just to remove the health of any large creature that may come out that our little chip damage creatures may have difficulty dealing with. You don't have to have it if you find that you're not using it very often. You could replace it with something else, like a Drag to Hell. That kills one of our creatures as well, but it doesn't really matter because they're so cheap anyway. It's not that much of a hardship to revive them out of the grave and play them again. Next up, we have Turn to Frog. This is to deal with the big sort of gimmicky creatures. Any Doom Machines, Beastkin Jurgens, Minos, this kind of thing. Turn to Frog will shut those down immediately, which is extremely useful. Once they've been turned into a frog, they can be killed with any of the creatures, or you can actually kill it with Notira's Needle, which will give you Dark Resource to use. Next, we have Command Hunting. With all of our low-cost creatures, it's quite easy to ensure that one of them is always in the middle of the field, and Command Hunting takes full advantage of that. Very useful to have. Then we have the Vampire. Again, utility health removal creature. You could use the Shadow Vampire, that's certainly much more popular right now, or even a Vampire +1, but the normal Vampire still works very effectively. Then we have Persona Lynn. She works in basically the same way as a Mana Eagle would. She will apply her ability not only every 2 turns, but also on the turn that you place her. So, player down, she will do her attack damage, which is 3, 5, or 7, depending on her level, to whatever creature's in front, and then continue to do that every 2 turns afterwards. She also, unlike the Eagle, does not bounce around, so it means that you can place her more strategically, which is quite nice. That being said, the Eagle is also an extremely valuable card, so we also have that in our deck. Again, utility health removal, and he's just a very, very useful card to have in general. And finally, our most expensive creature, the Hellhound. Once again, health removal utility effect. This one applied over the entire field. Now, Hellhound is extremely vulnerable to freeze summon. So if your opponent is running mana and you see him discard a card into the grave, a mana card into the grave, assume that it's freeze summon if you're about to bring out the Hellhound, and just try to drop a low-cost creature before you drop the Hellhound, just to bait out that trap. So, as you can see, quite a cheap deck, quite low-cost creatures, low attack values. However, taking them all together, especially with their utility HP removal, it can be extremely effective and can absolutely begin to steamroll your opponent in the late game. So let's jump into a battle and see how it runs. Okay, first fight against Karashu from Brazil, I think, using the default female hero. Very nice. And we're using Draft Wagon because actually he's quite useful. Yeah, he's a pretty good card, honestly. All right, so she's not running any mutants, interesting, and gold, mana, nature. All right, so we don't need to be at all concerned about heavy offering because she's got no dark, so we'll just play the elf. She can answer that with a removal spell or a creature in a different slot, so let's see where she goes with this. Okay, so she answers with an elf in a separate slot. All right, so that was probably the best move that she could have made, really. Just trying to trade damage with us. Ours goes out first, that gives us an advantage. I think we will actually block the elf with Lynn. She is pretty good, honestly, against elves. Although she costs 2 more, the elf doesn't deal anywhere near the kind of damage it needs to in order to remove her, and the enemy tends to then overcommit on resources with either subsequent creatures or removal spells in order to take her off the board. So we will probably come out with either an even resource trade or with a positive resource trade on our part with Lynn, and it prevents us from taking any damage in the early game, which is fairly important for a chip damage deck. We want to deal as much down. Okay, all right, so she's discarded into nature. Now, that looks like a trap. However, Draft Wagon's effect is actually going to completely remove that. She only has 1 card in the grave, and when she levels up, a random card from the grave will go back into her hand, but she only has the 1. So whatever trap she's just placed is about to come right back out. There it goes, right back out into her hand. So whatever trap that was, it now has extra grave cost on it, which is fantastic for us. All right, Lynn and the elf are still doing well. We'll drop the imp because I want to bait out some kind of a response. So far, we don't know anything about her deck other than she has a nature trap and an elf in it. And I would like to see how she responds to this kind of powerful offensive presence on the board. Because if we have a better idea of what kind of deck she's running, it'll mean that we can plan out our moves much better. She's got a lot of nature. Okay, so she's discarded another, well, not another, but she's discarded the nature trap again, which is fine. We don't feel the need to play any more creatures, so yeah, I mean, we'll just wait to see what she does, and in the interim, we'll charge up our resources. So we've got her down to 15 damage, but I would suspect that now, and we're about to level up, and she's only halfway there, but yeah, okay, so this was about the time when you expect the counterattack to come out. She was obviously hoping that we drop another creature or something and overcommit, but we didn't. Okay, and it's Triss. All right, that's fine. At least it's not a light +1 variant. Hellhound's pretty effective here, so if we level up, probably, yeah, if we just level up here, and we'll play the Hellhound in front of the elf, because the archer is just going to target down the Hellhound. Our elf will tank Triss, and then the other elf will just bounce into the Hellhound, and we can deal with all of this next turn. Turn to Frog. Onto the Hellhound. Okay, interesting. That actually works out in our favor, because what that means is that we can now bring the Hellhound back out again. Now, I think we're 2 resources short at the moment. Let's just take a look. Yeah, okay, so we're a bit short. But what we can do is we can drop... Or we can play Notira's Needle. Yeah, we can play Notira's Needle onto the elf. That'll kill him and get us one of the resources that we need in order to get our Hellhound. So our Hellhound's ready to go next turn. And we'll drop Lynn in front to kill the Triss. But the trap does come out and it was an ambush. Fine. Okay, that's still no problem. Because what that means is the next turn we can play the Hellhound in front of the Elven Archer. The Hellhound will kill the Ambush Vine and the Triss. And then on its next turn it will kill the Elf Archer. Another turn to Frog. Okay, alright. So she understands that we're basically a chip damage deck and she is trying to shut us down. It's draining her resources pretty low. Now ours aren't phenomenal either, but it's less of a problem for us to have low resources than for her because our deck is designed around this kind of, low level or low cost chip damage. So we can still play the Hellhound. However, she just discarded mana, so we have to assume that that is a free summon. It may very well not be, but we can't take the risk. So we'll play it and free summon. Okay. So that's fine. The elf will now tank that Elven Archer, and we can just carry on and play our Hellhound as we intended. Excellent. All right, so that gives us a very strong presence on the board now. That Elven Archer is not going to be doing anything, and she can't summon Triss for a long, long time. Not unless she gets very, very lucky with her charges. Nope, she goes into gold, so that's no help to her. Ah, Bomb Squad. Okay. Now that's a bit of a problem because we can't summon Hellhound back out if he dies. We don't have anywhere near enough resources, and we kind of need the Hellhound on the board. It's getting into late game now. So if we discard the Imp and we discard the Magic Missile, we can actually just use our very own Turn to Frog on the Bomb Squad. We kind of need the Hellhound out on the board. We need him to be providing pressure and damage onto the opposing hero. Because if we let her get another Triss out, we're in a lot of trouble. It's going to be much, much harder for us to remove another Triss. Okay, so she charged into nature, but and we're not going to deal fatal. Oh, we are going to deal fatal damage. Okay, she just revived and put herself into fatal range. Yeah, she realizes that. That's unfortunate. I think we've all done that. So I'll just say, good job, because it was a good fight. It was, and well, would agree. Okay, well, that just sounds sarcastic. I didn't mean it to sound sarcastic. I honestly meant that it was a good play. I actually feel really bad about that now. So if you're watching Kurashu, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it to be sarcastic. I feel kind of bad about that. Oh well. Sorry. Second fight. Okay, fight number 2. Let's see if we can not be a jerk in this one. Against Lucas, PvP first Dan. Always interesting using the cat merchant. Alright, so he's got 1 mutant, it looks like, and he's using gold, nature, and light. Alright, interesting. Given that he's using the cat merchant, we have to kind of... Well, leopard, okay. We have to kind of assume that one of, at the very least, his sort of trump finisher cards is gold. So we'll play Lynn on the same principles we played her in front of the elf in the last game. Except that Lynn is even more effective against leopards and hyena kings. Oh, nice to meet you. Okay. Let's see if we can be nice. It's great to meet you. Good. Okay. Thank you, Draft Wagon. So that's always nice. It's always nice when people say hi in these things. All right. And another elf. So actually, this may be a chip damage deck. Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll drop the vampire. That'll take the elf's health off and give us a pretty strong vampire on the field. Yeah, that's Bomb Squad. All right, well, Lynn is kind of going to kill herself this round, unfortunately, because she's going to do the damage and then her ability is going to activate. There's nothing we can really do about that. And as you can see, he took 2 creatures and more resources to kill Lynn than we spent on bringing her out. And because it was 2 creatures, that's an extra 2 on the grave cost, which you do need to take into your calculations as well. It's not just about how much somebody spent on removing you, it's how much they will also then need to spend in the future. Okay. All right, so he's charging into gold. He does kind of need to answer this pretty quickly, but if he's using sort of a fairly top-heavy deck, as in he's using a lot of strong creatures, or it's more of an end game kind of thing, which it does seem like he is, then he can take these hits to begin with. Still, that's 7 damage, and that's not insignificant. So whatever he's going to do, he's got to do it fairly soon, or he simply won't be able to respond to us in the mid-game in time. Yeah, okay, so he realizes that. So he's going for the surprise attack onto the elf and the boomerang. Okay, cool. I like that card. I tend not to see it very much, but it is a good card. All right, so that's fine. We'll level up, and we will revive so that whatever he does now, we have a full hand and we can respond to it. Okay, so he revives from the grave, which hurts himself a little bit more, and then levels up to 3. Whilst I would prefer to respond, I think we need to start poking him a little bit, force him to reply to something. So let's play the imp into the middle of the field. Always into the middle because we've got the command hunting. And let's see how he responds to this. Because this will be quite interesting. This should be quite indicative of exactly what his deck is. So far it seems to be chip, but he's hoarding his resources to such an extent that it feels like sort of early game chip, late game aggro almost, or sort of heavy punching. Leopard. Okay. And Dancer. Interesting. All right. Well, all we'll do then is probably just a Hellhound, right? We place him down. The Hellhound will kill the Dancer next turn. The Imp will kill the Leopard this turn. Again, forcing a strong response from him because he can't let 16 damage just sit on the field. He's got to do something about it. Okay, is it a trap or is he... No, he's charging up for something. What's he charging up for? Beastmaster Klaus. Okay, alright, so yeah. Chip damage in the early game, then he hopes that Beastmaster Klaus is going to summon something nasty, and he summons Jurgen. Because of course he summons Jurgen. Okay, that's not a big deal though. We'll just play this as though this was a Jurgen deck. We will turn to Frog the Jurgen itself, which the Imp will then kill quite handily. And we will remove Klaus's massive HP with our Vampire, giving ourselves a pretty bulky Vampire on the field. Now, that takes him down to almost no resources, really. His gold's not bad, but the rest of it's suffering quite heavily. So normally, in situations like this, you don't really want to kill the Klaus. He's used up his ability, and he can't charge up anymore. So you don't want to kill the Klaus, usually, because you don't want him to just revive Klaus right back out onto the field with a full complement of energy. That's not a big deal. But in this case, he only has 1 nature resource, so he can't summon Klaus even if we remove him. And if we can remove Klaus from the board, then that gives us sort of an open 14 damage onto our opponent. Now, unfortunately, if we just leave the Hellhound and the bomb squad's actually going to remain alive because it'll kill the Hellhound next turn. So we've actually got to use some resources just so that we don't leave the bomb squad's 8 damage on the field. Okay. And that leaves him in a tricky situation. Okay, he's charging up towards light. I really hope it's not an Orperia, although even if it is, we've put the bomb squad into the grave as well, so he can't guarantee that he'd bring out Klaus. Dragonman Knight Light +1. Now that is an interesting mutant choice. Very interesting. Well, we don't... Yeah, okay. We don't have the Turn to Frog or the strip, but a double combination of Command Hunting and then Notira's Needle, and that gives us Fatal. Interesting Klaus deck. Chip, damage to begin with, and then bring out the Klaus later on. Interesting. And that was the Persona Lynn deck. Like a lot of little snowballs rolling down a hill, it can very quickly become an avalanche. So if you'd like to copy the deck directly into your game, there's the share code up in the top right hand corner as always. Thank you to everyone for watching, and a special thank you to everybody who subscribed so far. Until next time, have fun and good luck.